So is Mosunda taught you the mean variance optimization? No. An efficient market hypothesis? No, fine. So what? So end goal is we want to do the capital asset pricing model. But before that, we want to do two core foundational things. One is called mean variance optimization or Markowitz mean variance optimization. Another is called efficient market hypothesis. So that will be the two foundational things on which we will develop the capital asset pricing model. Let us first, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I'll try to speak up. Yeah. Come sit here. So the first thing we are going to talk about is Markowitz mean variance optimization. Variance optimization. Okay. And this mean variance optimization essentially it was the paper was written published in 1952, and that oftentimes that are being considered as the kind of starting of the modern quantitative finance. What we know today that starts with this Harry Markowitz mean variance optimization. So what is it talking about? So typical a fund manager or a personal investor, what you are faced with when you are doing investment, right? You have bunch of assets. So maybe you have K many assets, right? A1, A2, dot, 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 AK. You have a K many asset and you want to invest some amount in these assets, right? So, and of course, your target is to make the asset get, have some return by the end of certain period. So you may have a notion like, okay, by the end of first year, or maybe end of second year, or maybe end of 5-year period, you have to have some kind of period in your mind. By the end of that period, you would like to make some amount of return on that asset.
Investing in asset or instrument?
So typically it is asset, okay, and then instruments. When you are calling it instruments, it will become more generic. It becomes more generic. For example, derivative is not an asset. Typically, derivative in a classical finance perspective is not really an asset. Okay, it's more like a insurance product kind of thing. Like, you have a legal agreement with another party to that, you will pay certain amount if some event happens. Like, typical call option is European call option is, okay, if the price of the asset goes beyond certain strike price, I will pay whatever the difference, right? So it's sort of an insurance. If that happens, if that event happens, I'll pay you a difference, or I pay you the whatever this amount. So this is a sort of a legal contract. So it is not really an asset, right? But it's a finance. So then what is an insurance? So it is like an insurance product. Then what is it? So typically this are called as an instrument. Okay. So then So instrument is more like a generic term. So if a security can be called an instrument, a bond can be called an instrument, option can be called an instrument. But typical, when we are investing, you can invest in the real estate, you can invest in the gold, you can invest in the, you know, uh, typical stock, equity. These are the typical asset where you have some kind of property rights. When you buying gold, if you consider gold as an asset, you know tangentially that okay, that much gold I do own, right? Now, if you buy a real estate asset, real estate, I know this piece of land belongs to me or belongs to my family, right? If I say buy equity stock, uh, if I buy equity stock and the percentage of that stock on the world of, say I buy 10 PCS stock, suppose that is a 0.00001% of the all the stocks that are available in the market. So that means I know that I am owner of 0.00001% owner of the TCS. So that means you have some kind of rights on that uh, that engagement, whatever that asset you're calling it. So this is typical investor will invest their money in that kind of asset, and you hope that the value of that asset will appreciate in a period of time, over a period of time, and then that is typical investor's dilemma. That now question is, should I invest in say State Bank equity share, or should I invest in the fixed deposit of a State Bank, or should I invest in corporate bonds of State Bank of India, right? So if you have say 1 lakh rupees and or say 1 crore rupees, if you put it in fixed deposit of State Bank of India, they will not pay you more than 5.5%, right? But now you turn around and say, now you are saying, okay, I have 1 crore rupees, I want to invest in State Bank of India's corporate bond. If you are allowed to invest in corporate State Bank of India's corporate bond, probably they will pay you 6.5 or 7%, a little higher. Why? Because you're putting a lot of money with State Bank of India. Now the third option is you turn around and say that I will buy share of State Bank of India from the market at certain price, if it achievable, and you hope, but there State Bank of India promises nothing. Even dividend payment is not being promised. If I'm paying dividend, it is out of my, State Bank of India's CEO pays the dividend, that is out of the goodwill gesture. Okay, I pay around. So State Bank of India, so that in there, and on the top of that, you have a volatility risk, that price of stake, price of a stock of State Bank of India might go down from say 100 rupees to 90 rupees, right? It can go up also. If it can go up to 120 rupees. So in that case, your return will be 20%. So it's like more risk you are taking, more possibility of making a gain, right? But that is what it is with the equity. Gold is completely different thing. It's like commodity. It's a commodity which has a very peculiar kind of asset. In a sense, it doesn't. Why gold is considered so valuable? So you consider 1 kg iron and 1 kg gold. After 1 year, that iron's property will change because it will get some rust, right? Since the property changes, 1 kg iron's property changes or steel changes, so the valuation will also change. But 1 kg gold will not get a rust, and it property will be intact even after 1 year. So that was the intrinsic value. So that means there is an intrinsic value in gold that was identified by the human civilization, 5,000, 6,000 years early. And so that's why gold become a sort of a real sacred asset in the human history. So the eventually our thing is, I want to invest in certain different assets. That is, these are the options we had. Or if you have decided, okay, I want to invest in equity stock only, then your option is, okay, I have 500 different assets, 500 different equity stocks where to invest.
You can have to belong to the same asset class or
So that is what I'm saying. Though either you can, so how you define your problem, it's up to you as a manager or as a investor. Like you can define it, okay, I want to put some amount in the gold, some amount in the equity, some amount in the real estate. You can define your problem in that way. Or you can define like, I'm going to this much of money, say, 1 lakh rupees I have in my pocket and I want to invest only in equity. But should I put all my 1 lakh rupees in one single stock? Or should I invest in the 5 different stock? Right? So that is the dilemma that we have. So you can define it in that way also. So then in that case, your A1, A2, AK are the K different stocks. Okay. Now you can think of like, okay, within the equity, I have some money in stock, some money in the derivatives, like options or futures. So that is also, in that case, your period will be short, like 1 month, whatever the maturity period, that will be the evaluation time, and then after that, you are out of it. Again, you have to reevaluate your portfolio. So, but typically, the way it goes that you have K many, I'm using asset here is a sort of a generic way. You can define according to your problem definition, you can take it, like you understand, right? Like either it could be like gold and real estate and stock, or within stock it could be like TCS, Reliance, and Wipro, all these kind of stocks. That is also, this could be the definition of the stocks as well. So these are the whole story we start with. Now question is, how much money I put in the first one, how much money I put in the second one, how much money I put in the kth one, right? And so some of them should be, I'm just calling it in the weight, whatever money you have, you just multiply with that, so you will get the whole thing. So summation omega I should be 1. So this is my whole story goes like this. Okay. Now, couple of things I would like to introduce here. One is called risk premium. So first is return. So the first is return. So suppose P is the price of an asset or stock at time t. Okay, then return is typically log return, rather log of pt by pt minus 1, typically log of pt minus log of pt minus 1. Simple return is pt minus 1 divided by pt minus 1. Okay. Now, there is a relationship between our simple return and log return. Can you tell me what is the relationship? So I can write it as PT by PT minus 1, exactly, minus 1, right? So essentially, I can write it as a PT by PT minus 1 equal to RT plus 1, and then RT is, so this is equal to e to the power small r, correct? So this is the relationship between simple return and log return. So if I give you simple return, you know how to calculate the log return. If I give you the log return, you can know that when how to calculate the simple return. Can you tell me under certain condition, under one condition actually, simple return and log return will be very close to each other? Almost, huh? Okay. If you if you expand this, can you e to the power RT, can you expand it?
Expansion. 1 plus e to the summation of x factorial by r factorial.
So that means, and when it will happen, so basically when R capital RT plus and small rt, like simple return and log return, will be very close to each other. So basically when there will be, both of them will be very close to 0, as you said correctly. Right? Correct. Clear? Anybody have any question? In the people who are in online, anybody have any question? So when basically what I'm saying, when mod of RT is less than say epsilon, I mean small, like really small, the rates, okay, that time RT is approximately smaller. You can check it out. At the daily return level, you will not see much of a difference between log return and simple return, daily level. But weekly onwards, you will see the difference is negligible. It's not negligible. It is, there is a significant difference. Okay, but at a daily level or it below daily level, like if you like hourly level data or a minute level data, you will see that just barely any difference between the two. Okay. Acha. Suppose these are the stock returns. So that means there is a risky asset. These are risky assets. So consider AI a risky asset. Say gold. Gold is also risky asset because gold also fluctuates, right? Or typical stock. Let's focus on stock market. Okay, let's focus on the stock. So these are the price of these stocks always goes up and down, and always happens. So consider it's a risky asset. Now you have two options. If you have rupees 100, either you can invest in a risk-free asset, much nothing is asset, or in a risky asset. Okay. So what is risk-free asset? Decided return, fixed deposit by State Bank of India. What is the chance that State Bank of India will default on their fixed deposit?
Very less. No chance.
Almost no chance, because it's owned by Government of India, right? Or Government India bond, or state government's bond. These are like really, so the return, so let us call RF is return of risk-free asset. Okay. Now I have RT, which is the log return of, let us only focus on the log return for now. Okay. Log return of a stock. So RT minus RF is called risk premium.
But then you're comparing two assets.
Correct. So I have 100 rupees. I can invest 100 rupees in a fixed deposit of State Bank of India. It will give me 6% guaranteed return. Right? So by the end of the year, I'll get 6 rupees from here, from the risk-free rate. But what is the chance that RT will be more than 6% or less than 6%? It could be negative also.
Yes.
Right? So if RT is 12%, then my risk premium is 6. So additional 6 rupees is my premium for taking additional risk. So if I have invested in State Bank of India stock, what is the chance that 100 rupees I invested in State Bank of India stock has become 112 by the end of the year?
And then the risk premium is always with respect to
The risk-free rate,
asset rate.
risk-free asset rate. Now it can happen that stock of State Bank of India goes up, but only 100 at 104 rupees. So that means my return will be only 4. I could have earned 6 rupees. So my risk premium is -2. So there is a risk. So even if there is a positive return, my -2 is actually my opportunity loss of not investing in the fixed deposit of State Bank of India. India's fixed deposit, not in State Bank of India, in fixed deposit of State Bank of India. And what happens if 100 rupee investment comes down to 96 rupees by the end of the year? It is highly possible. So if that happens, then I lose 4 rupees. And here is I also losing 6 rupees. So my net loss is, my risk premium is -12 rupees effectively. Sorry, -10.
So in the starting, the assets that we considered A1, A2, they are a mixture of risk-free and.
No, I have not come to that. I'm just saying that I have the possibility of investing in many risky assets. Right? So we should always think about the return, not on terms of return. We should always think about in terms of risk premium.
Sir,
Yes.
12, 4 and -4 are log returns or the simple return?
I'm considering log return. I'm considering log return. Okay. I know. You are probably thinking if stock price has gone up to 112, then 112 minus 100 will be little more than 12%. I understand. I'm just rounding it off and just keeping it a little simple. Okay. Okay. Clear? Anybody have any doubt? Are you guys with me? Fine. Now, So we agreed on, we are considering k possible assets and we want to invest in these k possible asset, and we should mainly work with the risk premium and not with the direct return of the asset. Okay. So that is fine. So now I have now A1. Let us call this risk premium well, what notation I can use? I have used capital R, capital R, AF. So let me just use R. Say R bar. So let me just use R bar. So R bar is the risk premium I am calling it. So if I have A1, A2, AK, K many risky assets I'm considering. So I have written from risk premium from R1 bar, R2 bar, RK bar. Okay. Now,
risk-free assets.
hmm?
Even
These are all risky assets.
risky assets.
Risky assets. Yeah, particular risk-free rate.
Or one single.
One single risk-free rate. Yeah, that is fine. You can take any of the risk-free rate and you just, that's fine. Yeah. Now, I mean, there are ways to do it in a, people do kind of treasury bond yield. Typical sovereign bonds yield changes every day depending on how the bonds are getting transacted, and sometimes people take that as the rate for risk-free rate. We don't need to go into that detail. For the timing, let us keep things simple. We just take the whatever the risk-free single value as a risk-free rate, which we probably will get if we go to the State Bank of India, and a guaranteed return, rate of return, if we put our money as a fixed deposit in that bank. Okay. Simple. Let's keep the thing simple. So this is my risk-free rate, and this is the thing. Now question is how we build. So now what will, if I invest some amount in here, some amount in here, and this way omega k, these omega i's can take any value between 0 and 1. If I put a 0, if I get a 0, that means in that asset I'm not investing any money. If it is 1, that means I'm putting all my money in that asset. And if it is somewhere in between, so that means a part of my investment I'm putting in that asset or that stock. And sum of WI equal to 1. 1 to K is 1. Okay. So what is my, by end of the period, what will be my portfolio return? Huh? Summation of omega I and Ri bar K. Correct. So all I have to do just omega 1 R1 bar plus omega 2 R2 bar plus dot omega K R K bar. So this will be my portfolio return, or the risk premium of my portfolio.
Yeah, risk premium of the portfolio is not the same as portfolio return. Portfolio return will be with respect to the
So
principal value.
that we can calculate very quickly.
Yeah, we can.
Right? So basically omega 1 will be R1 minus RF plus omega 2 R2 minus RF plus dot 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 omega K R K minus RF.
At WIRF.
So it will be like summation omega I Ri 1 to K, and this is summation omega I RF. RF is a constant. You take it out, summation omega is 1. So basically, so it will be like RF, this is RF, and this is, so this is the weighted return of my portfolio. And so this is my weighted return of my portfolio or portfolio return. This is my this is my portfolio return. This is risk-free rate. And this is, so that means this is portfolio premium. Clear? So this is my portfolio premium. This is my portfolio return. And this is the risk-free rate. Clear? All right. Now, how we decide where to invest money? So this is, I can now calculate my portfolio premium. I can calculate my portfolio return. I have the risk-free rate. So how we construct our portfolio so that it will be some sense maximize my expected return. So this is my problem statement. Okay, so the problem statement is how we construct our portfolio such that few things actually it attains an expected return and minimize the risk. So this is my problem statement. So what does it mean that how to construct a portfolio? So let me use a different color, and these are very important. The problem statement is very important. So first is we have to construct a portfolio. What does it mean? This phrase has a particular meaning. Constructing a portfolio such that it attains expected return. Expected return is a second point, and minimize the risk is a third point. So let us dissect these 3 points. This is what intuitively that is what we want, right? When we want to invest our money in the stock market, that is exactly we want. We want to construct a portfolio which will attain this, give us some kind of expected return. I have, like, intuitively we are smart enough to figure out that, we cannot have a portfolio return of 50% a year. Only, only bank robbers can do that. I mean, their return will be 100%, right? But it is not possible. We know, okay, if the risk-free rate is 6%, I can make 12%, I can make 15%. The really smart one will say, okay, I can make 20%, but beyond that is very difficult. So I want to attain some degree of return on my portfolio, but at the same time, I figured out that, there is a risk also involved, because when you go for a high risk, high return stock, there is a risk profile associated with those kind of stocks. So we have to keep in our mind what is the kind of risk profile I am exploring. So this is this is what we want intuitively what we want to achieve. That is our problem statement. Now, rather we can call it a business problem statement. I call it business problem statement. A typical, fund manager will come and tell you, or fund managers will be much the business developer who go and sell, product to the normal customers. They will come and tell us, you are a great analyst. Can you just give me a portfolio which will give a great return but minimize the risk? This is a typical business problem. Okay, let us dissect these three key issues. All right. Construct our portfolio. What does it mean? Just take two examples. Let's take an example. Suppose I have 3 assets. I'm going to invest in 3 stock. Okay. Stock 1, stock 2, stock 3. I can input 20% in stock 1, 30% in stock 2, 50% in stock 3. That is one possible portfolio. Okay, let us call it P1. There is a possibility that I invest 25% here, 25% here, 50% here. There is a possibility, third possibility, 50% here, 30% here, 20% here. How many such possibilities are there? Infinitely many possibilities are there. So this is basically what I am looking for. When I'm saying I want to construct a portfolio, this is exactly what I'm looking for, that how much money I want to invest in each of the assets. Okay, provided. Now comes to the second point. Second point is it attains an expected return. And the word expected is some intuitive. A business developer has some kind of expectation, but for data scientists like us, how we calculate expectation? Summation of xi times pxi, the typical. So that is how we are going to define our expected return, right? So my portfolio return, expected portfolio return will be essentially summation of omega I expected value of Ri to 1 to k, right? And then I will say that my expected Rp will be, say, some mu 0 or mu p. I can say that, okay, it could be 12% or 13% or 15%, whatever. But you put a value on that. So this is my expected portfolio return. Remember that expected portfolio return is not guaranteed. When I'm talking about expected, that means actual return could be more than the expected, less than the expected, because it's all stochastic. It's all probabilistic. I don't know. After 1 year, it's a risky asset. We don't know what will be the price of that asset. For price of that stock from 1 year. If all K assets are risky assets, all K stocks are risky stocks, I don't know, there is no guarantee that it will go to the 12%, all of them will be going to the 12%. There could be, so suppose my expected return is 12%. So that means some stocks in my portfolio has to be better than 12%. Some stock may below the 12%, that on an average, they will come to the 12%. That is my hope. So actual final return, my RP could be well below a mu P, well above mu P. But not necessarily my final observed actual return will be exactly mu P. In fact, the probability that it will be exactly mu P is 0. Right? But it most likely it will be above mu P or less than mu P. So second characteristic dissected. Clear? Anybody have any question?
So your expectation of RI is the historical average of the
Expected value, expected return of that stock, expected return in over that period.
okay. You can set in a time frame.
And
And WI is a fixed rate.
WIM fix, yeah, because once I invested, that is my investment amount on the day of investment. Then I can't, once I invested, I can't change anything.
What we're getting is a realization, so it's not equal.
Final at the end, what I will get, I don't know. Of course, the people will, the stocks which will appreciate far more, their weight will be higher at the end of the period because they have appreciated more. And the stocks which will be appreciating less, their weight will be probably reduced a bit because they have appreciated less. But what is important to understand is these omega i's at the time of investment, at the initial time, what was the value, not at the end, because I don't know what is going to be the weight at the end at that time. Okay, so that you have to keep in mind. And this is the expected return of that ith stock or asset. This is the expected return of ith stock or asset. Okay, clear? Next, third issue. This is the first issue, there is the second issue, and there is the third issue. Minimize risk. What is risk? First, when I'm saying minimize risk, of course, everybody wants to minimize their risk in the stock market. But what is risk? Variance or standard deviation is the typical measure of risk. That on an average, how much, if it is dropping on an average, how much is dropping? If it is going up on an average, how much it is going up? So what is the fluctuation? That will give me some sense. So risk is typically, there are different measures of risk, but most popular one is the volatility. Volatility which is typically called standard deviation. Typically, it is not typically, it is standard deviation. In finance, it's called volatility. Standard deviation of RP. So I want to calculate the standard deviation of RP. Okay. How we calculate standard deviation of RP? We calculate standard deviation of RP by taking variance of RP. Right? What is variance of RP? Variance of RP is omega transpose R. Right? What is variance of omega transpose R? Omega sigma omega transpose sigma omega, where sigma is the covariance of R, covariance matrix of R. So it is a, so how many steps we are considering? K. So this sigma is a K cross K matrix, right? Omega transpose is 1 cross K. So this is a 1 cross K matrix, K vector. This is a K cross K vector. This is K cross 1. So I will come up with 1 cross 1, which is the variance of RP. Take the square root of that. You get what? Standard deviation of portfolio return. Clear? And I want to minimize this standard deviation of, Now question is, let us consider two portfolio. Portfolio omega 1, which is basically omega 1 1, omega 1 2, dot dot dot, omega 1 K. Okay, this is one portfolio P1. So when I'm calling portfolio, it's basically my investment weights in different stock assets in the portfolio. Sometimes these are called strategy. Also, each portfolio is also called a strategy. Okay. So I have if I have two portfolio, in some textbook it will be called I have two strategies. So don't confuse. Same thing, they're talking of the same thing. Okay, so my strategy is invest omega 1 1 in this amount, omega 2 in the 1 2 in the second asset, omega 1 3 in the third asset. So that is my strategy. Essentially, that is my portfolio weight. Okay. And similarly, I have a P2, omega 2, omega 2 1, omega 2 2, omega 2 K. Okay. So this is my strategy 2. This is strategy 1, this is strategy 2, or portfolio 1 or portfolio 2. Now what I want is, suppose I able to figure out, so my RP1 is the omega 1 transpose R tilde. So R tilde is return of stock 1 over the same period, R2 RK. Okay. RP2 is omega 2 transpose R tilde. Now suppose expected value of RP1 is equal to expected value of RP2 is equal to mu P. I came up with two strategies which on expectation they're giving the same return. Is it real? Actually, it is very much real. Two mutual fund. Both are saying that, on average, they're giving 11% return, which is like 11% return. And the question is which in mutual fund you should invest. The one which is less volatile, which is less risky, because that means it can go down with a less probability than it can go, the other one. So I would prefer the one, so basically minimize, that means I am technically I am minimizing. I will take the minimum of RP1 and RP2. Sorry, sigma of, not the minimum of. I'll be back. Just. Hello. So I will what I'm going to do. So sigma P1 and sigma P2. That is the one I will choose. So now my whole problem boils down to essentially, now there are infinitely many possible portfolios or strategies. So whole thing boils down to minimization of omega transpose sigma omega over omega such that omega transpose expected value of RP is equal to mu P. You decide what is your expected return, and then on the class of portfolios, I will choose the one which gives me the minimum volatility.
While investing in mutual funds, is it something known to the investors what the volatility is? Because the expected returns are known to the investors.
So technically, most of the places, what happens is in the mutual fund brochure, they should give two things. What is their average return over a last 5 years or 6 years? And during that period, what is their volatility? That much they should give, period. On the above, they also give risk adjusted return and all those things. That is fine, but they should give at least bare minimum, and mostly they provide. Okay? And as a trained, financial quantitative finance data scientist, you should be looking at their last historical returns performance and their volatility. You should be able to figure out which one is given at a given expected return, which one is less riskier.
When they're showing returns, does it mean the risk premium return or
That typically they just report the overall return. They don't put the risk premium.
so that's the overall portfolio return?
Typically, that is my experience. They never say risk premium.
In that sense, why would anyone want to invest in more volatile mutual fund? They have the question and they can compare. In that sense, everyone would invest in one sort of mutual fund.
Correct. Technically, yes. But in reality, what happens, their exact return and volatility will never match. Return and volatility, their exact return will never match. So then they will say, oh, you're kind of comparing apple to apple and orange to apple to oranges. So that's why they also give some risk adjusted return, or sometimes they call it alpha return or whatever, right? Which is typically, they will say that, okay, this is my portfolio return minus RF. They will divide that by the sigma of the portfolio. Okay, this is called typically the alpha or the risk adjusted return. They, most of the time they do report that. And this is somewhat comparable. I mean, do the same kind of thing for you. Okay. Now, what typically, last one thing and then we will close the session, okay? Typically what happens is, you can think of, it is, I am putting the sigma P here, the portfolio return here, portfolio volatility on the x-axis, and portfolio expected return on the y-axis, right? Now, if this is my expected return, and then there will be basically world of portfolios you can think of and compute their volatility and return, right? And you can just plot their expected return and expected and the portfolio volatility. Okay, and typically you will see that if you go higher on the expected return, if you keep increasing your return, higher return, it is very difficult. Your overall volatility will also increase. This is a typical behavior. More return you will ask for, more risk you have to take. Okay, this is a typical behavior in the market, and that makes sense also because you have to invest on riskier and riskier asset. Now, given if I am investing this is my expected return. If there are two assets on this expected return, I would prefer this one.
Yes.
If this is my expected return, I would prefer this one, right? But you will always find beyond that, you cannot minimize the risk. So if this is the scenario, everybody will end up, this is something called frontier. Okay, everybody will end up on this curve, and this is called efficient frontier. This is called the efficient frontier. Okay. Theory says in an ideal stock market, in ideal market, nobody will be here. A rational investor will always choose this one.
But if everyone, ideally, if everyone is on the efficient frontier, then all the other ones are going to fall back.
Yes. So anybody who are here, any portfolio, that there is another portfolio who is here. Suppose there are two mutual funds. One is on the efficient frontier. This is one is here. So eventually nobody will invest here. They will withdraw money and invest in this one.
But then its volatility will decrease because now
Which one?
no more investment is being attracted to the. So there are 2 points. One is on the efficient frontier and one is the other with high volatility. And we are going with the efficient frontier. And then everyone is going with efficient.
Correct.
Frontier.
So just a minute. Before going further, what I'm saying that eventually that this guy will cease to exist because nobody will invest in him. He will cease to exist. He will get out of the market. If everybody gets out, all the people who are inefficient, either they will get out of the market or they will learn the business, trade of the business, and they will eventually move to the efficient frontier. How they can invest? They can just cut a deal with this guy. They'll say, okay, I will draw the money from the market and you just invest for me. Right? They can just cut a deal that okay, bhaiya, you're efficient, you're doing better than me. Why bother to take risk? Whatever I am drawing my customer money, you just manage it. So this guy eventually start falling here. Either they will go out of business or they will just do a cooperative business with them and come to the efficient frontier. Make sense? So eventually there will be no guy who is here. They will wipe out. So only the people who in the efficient frontier, they will survive. Okay. And this solution gives us a solution on the efficient frontier, basically, always. So basically what you can do, you choose a mu P. For that mu P, you find a portfolio or that portfolio volatility, and that will, if you just join them, what it will do, you will just construct the efficient frontier. And given an expected return, whatever the portfolio that gives you this volatility, that is the optimal portfolio. Okay, that is Harry Markowitz came up with the called mean variance optimized portfolio or Markowitz portfolio. So any portfolio which is on the efficient frontier called Markowitz portfolio or mean variance optimized portfolio. So any,
something that is used in certain
there are a lot of I'm just telling you 1952 paper. So a lot of modification has happened, lot of improvement has happened. I'm just starting the modern quantitative finance 1952. Okay.
If everyone falls on the efficient frontier, then the effect is that there is for a particular UP there is a fixed distribution of weights that all the mutual funds are giving to the particular stock. So the stock value is right.
Not necessarily. If you look into the carefully, uniqueness of omega is not there. There could be two possible portfolio omega, same mean and same variance.
Okay. And that's how
So that means solution is not unique, not necessarily unique. It could be unique. Most likely it is unique, but we don't know. There could be two possible omega in existence. There could be more than one solution, which will give me which are on the portfolio, on the efficient frontier.
So with time, the expected return of stocks and variance also changes. So
Correct.
we need to update our model.
No, that is periodic. But given a fixed period, that is how it works.
Think of it as your time invest right now.
Hmm.
What is the weights you want to give?
Exactly, that's it. Right now, what is the weight I want to give? I give that, and then you just see what is the overall thing. So that's it. So any portfolio that are on efficient frontier are called Markowitz portfolio. Or mean variance optimized portfolio. Okay, so we stop here today. Next day, we will talk about the markets and some of the assumptions of efficient market and some of the assumptions under which Harry Markowitz designed this thing. There are a lot of, at least 6 major assumptions in the markets are there, under which this kind of efficient frontier was constructed under those assumptions, and which says that if your market characteristics satisfy those conditions or those assumptions, then there will be nobody beyond this in this area. Everybody on the frontier. But in reality, we do know that all the conditions are not being satisfied. And that means there will be some portfolio which are not on the frontier, which are less efficient. Okay, so we will talk about it, and that is where the market efficient market hypothesis comes, and how good it is, and all those things we will talk.
Will we also get into finding how to find the W?
Yeah. That hands-on, that will come on the hands-on. Okay. All right. Chalo. ठीक है. Thank you very much, guys.
Sir, can you maybe like upload the slides or
Yeah. I'll do that. And as well as the. So I'll just.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just.